This is the CBS Evening News. Bob Schieffer reporting. Good evening. Michigan Democrats caucus today to select delegates to the National Convention. At this point, Michael Dukakis appears to be holding a slight lead. Bruce Morton's here to tell us about it. Bruce?
Bob, the early returns show Governor Dukakis ahead. Here's how our tabulated vote numbers look. Jesse Jackson second, as you can see. Congressman Richard Gephardt of Missouri a somewhat distant third. Our graphic doesn't show Albert Gore or Paul Simon. They didn't really compete in Michigan, and they got very few votes there. The Michigan process is odd, but the stakes are high.
The miracle begins today.
Gephardt needed a miracle. He had expected originally to do well in Michigan, which makes cars and where unemployment is over 8%, with his tough talk on trade. But his poor showing Super Tuesday hurt him badly. He bounced back some, but polls still had him in third place.
Thank you.
Most of those polls showed Michael Dukakis of Massachusetts leading. In Hamtramck last night, where there are a lot of Polish Americans, Dukakis got something which may be unique, a sign with his name spelled out in kielbasa.
We've won from Alaska to Puerto Rico, from Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, Virginia. Michigan, your time has come.
Polls showed Jesse Jackson very close to Dukakis. The Michigan process is not quite like an election. The party, not the government, runs it. There were only a few hundred polling places across the whole state. Lots of people don't know where theirs is, so telling them, or taking them, as Jackson did with these voters, is important.
If you're not voting, come right on.
And the delegates are handed out by congressional districts, so the overall popular vote could go to one candidate, while somebody else was winning most of the delegates. What this all seems to add up to so far, Bob, is continued good news for Governor Dukakis, who seems likely to get most of the delegates. Continued good news for Jesse Jackson. Gephardt said he needed to win here, needed a miracle. His campaign heads on to Wisconsin in deep trouble. Bob?
Thank you, Bruce. Governor Dukakis is already in Wisconsin tonight, which, of course, holds its primary early next month. Well, Governor, what do you think of the situation today?
Well, if the news continues to be good, Bob, it's obviously very good news for us. Michigan is an important state. It was an important state, and if we can win in Michigan and do well and get a goodly share of those delegates, it's going to be an important milestone. But as you know, we've got lots and lots of contests up ahead, and this is a marathon, and it's going to continue to be a marathon. And I'm now in Wisconsin. I will be in Connecticut tomorrow. We've got Colorado as well coming up, and then the big states of New York and Pennsylvania and Ohio. So there's much to do, and there are many miles to go, but it's a very good day for us if, in fact, we're doing well in Michigan.
If you continue to do well, Governor, is it possible that you could get the nomination, or is any Democrat going to go to the convention this year with a nomination, or is this something that's going to be decided once the convention gets underway?
Well, I've always felt, Bob, from the beginning that although it would be a long one and it wouldn't be concluded and resolved until the final primaries, that even if one of us didn't have a numerical majority, we could have a substantial lead, and obviously I hope the person that has that is Mike Dukakis when we finish up with California and New Jersey. I think if I have a substantial lead at that point, I think the party will rally around and that I will go to the convention as a nominee. But obviously, if I'm going to win that kind of plurality at least, we've got to do well in the contests up ahead, and as you know, we're contesting in every single state in every part of the country. This is a national campaign, and I want to win my party's nomination with a national victory.
I know you haven't thought much about Republicans at this point, but the Republicans seem to have all but wrapped up their business. George Bush seems to have the nomination. What impact does that have on the Democratic race? What impact will it have on the general election, Governor, that the Republicans seem to have selected their candidates so early?
Well, I can think back 28 years, I know you can, Bob, to a time when another son of Massachusetts won the Democratic nomination, ran against an incumbent Republican vice president, and John Kennedy won. I hope that history can repeat itself this November.
Okay, thank you, Governor. As most people saw it, Michigan was shaping up as Richard Gephardt's last stand. Speculation before today's vote, of course, was that if he did not do well in Michigan, he would drop out of the campaign, since he must decide early next week whether to seek re-election to his congressional seat. Jacqueline Adams has been traveling with the Gephardt campaign this week.
For days, Dick Gephardt has been crisscrossing Michigan, hoping that today's caucuses would revive his presidential campaign.
We will have a miracle in Michigan tomorrow.
On the night of his Iowa caucus win, Gephardt thought that the miracle had already occurred.
This is your victory, too.
But even during the Iowa campaign, some pundits felt that his get tough on imports message wasn't broad or presidential enough, and his Iowa-bred outsider image wasn't credible for a leader in Congress.
What happened, I think, with Gephardt was his message was very powerful, but his fundamental message was a contradiction to his own career as very much an establishment figure in Washington.
That weakness in his message was compounded when Gephardt flew into New Hampshire tired.
New Hampshire is an 8-day campaign, and you got to be ready the morning after Iowa to go flat out. This guy wasn't completely ready.
But his opponents were ready to focus on his inconsistencies.
Congressman Gephardt acts tough toward big corporations, but takes their PAC money. Mike Dukakis refuses PAC money.
It is not until day 5 that Dick Gephardt goes on the counterattack, and by then it's to salvage second place, not to challenge the leader.
When the campaign headed south, the press and Al Gore joined the assault.
Newsweek says Gephardt seems like a phony flip-flopper. There is another choice.
That's when the money dried up.
By the time we got to Super Tuesday, Gephardt didn't have the money to put on a very powerful positive message that he had, or to respond to a very powerful negative message that his opponents were running against him.
The lack of money is the only failing Gephardt will admit.
I think my problem, if I have one, has been the lack of resources to get my message out. When I get my message to people, I win.
Here in blue-collar Michigan, Gephardt's populist, anti-foreign imports message did help reinvigorate his campaign. His message was so appealing, though, that his opponents began to use it.
If our message was so ugly and so bad for the party, why is it that Al Gore and Michael Dukakis is sounding more like Dick Gephardt?
The conventional wisdom agrees that unknown, underfinanced Dick Gephardt was right to go all out for an early Iowa win. But as today's caucus results made clear, the strategy that worked wonders for Jimmy Carter 12 years ago wasn't enough in 1988. Jacqueline Adams, CBS News, Detroit.
And another sign today that the campaign of Republican Bob Dole is all but over. Even though Dole is not yet withdrawn, some of his California backers today endorsed George Bush, among them Jim Nielsen, formerly Dole's Los Angeles chairman, who told a news conference today the switch had come about in the interest of unifying the party. Still ahead tonight on the CBS Evening News, Secretary of State Schultz will try another round of Middle East shuttle diplomacy, and later an update on some other news. We'll have a roundup for you.
What would you get if you crossed an Oldsmobile like this? With an Oldsmobile like this, you get an Oldsmobile that really cooks. The Cutlass Calais with a remarkable Quad 4 engine.
When you go shopping, you have to find the right fit, style, color.
When you do, you feel great.
But when you also find the Made in the USA label, you feel even better.
It's a great feeling.
Made in the USA. I've got big news for prune lovers who also love cereal. Actually, it's kind of small news when you look at it. It's Sunsweet bite-sized pitted prunes. Try them on your cereal, and you'll agree Sunsweet bite-size is just the right size.
It was announced today that Secretary of State Schultz is heading back to the Middle East to try again to sell the new U.S. peace plan. He'll arrive in Israel Easter Sunday. Word of the trip came as Schultz held a controversial meeting today on the peace process. Terrence Smith with more on that.
Ignoring Israeli objections, Secretary of State Schultz today invited two prominent Palestinian Americans with close ties to PLO Chairman Yasser Arafat to meet him at the State Department. Schultz also announced plans to return to the Middle East to push the stalled U.S. peace initiative. The secretary will arrive in Jerusalem a week from tomorrow and spend 6 days shuttling between Israel and her Arab neighbors.
When the secretary goes back to the region, he'll be in touch once again with the highest leadership of all the parties concerned.
Today's hour-long meeting with two members of the Palestine National Council, the PLO's parliament in exile, focused on Palestinian desire for a homeland and brought the U.S. one step closer to direct dealings with the PLO and its chairman.
We consulted with Mr. Arafat. It seems clear it should be clear
that we reflect the views of the Palestine Liberation Organization.
The State Department spokesman insists that the U.S. ban on negotiating with the PLO remains in effect.
Our policy has in no way changed concerning meetings with the PLO.
But one expert on the region argues that the State Department is splitting hairs.
This is just a way around the ban, around the prohibition, a loophole, a way around this this ban on the PLO. So we talk to the PLO without talking to members of the PLO.
The secretary's step through the loophole angered one of Israel's supporters in Congress.
To choose these two people who have repeatedly stated that Israel does not have a right to exist just makes no sense at this point in time.
But the participants saw the meeting as a watershed in U.S.-Palestinian contacts.
So you feel something has changed?
Oh, I think absolutely. Yes, I think it was meant to be changed, yeah.
But the meeting did not resolve the nettlesome question of Palestinian participation in peace talks with Israel. At best, it probably bought Secretary Schultz some additional credibility in the Arab countries he will visit in a final all-out effort to get actual negotiations started. Terrence Smith, CBS News, the State Department.
In the occupied territories, 3 more Palestinian protesters died today after confrontations with Israeli soldiers, and the Israeli-appointed Palestinian mayor of Gaza City turned in his resignation under pressure from protest leaders.
Lucky for this diver, he has a thin, powerful seal. So thin it's virtually airtight. So powerful it even holds up to pressure. No, it's not on this diver's mask. The seal is on his dentures. Extra Hold Fast Teeth has a seal so thin yet so powerful, it's virtually airtight. For a hold that's closer to real than any ordinary adhesive, Extra Hold Fast Teeth, the extra hold seal that's closer to real.
The finer things in life. Happily, some are affordable, like Grey Poupon Dijon mustard. Grey Poupon is so fine, it's even made with white wine. Its original French Dijon recipe adds distinctive flavor to beef, pork, and poultry, salad dressing and sauces, and of course, sandwiches. So enjoy one of life's finer pleasures.
Pardon me, would you have any Grey Poupon? But of course.
Grey Poupon, one of life's finer pleasures.
When you buy a new lawnmower, you want to believe that each one will be the last you'll ever have to buy. But in time, it becomes painfully clear that not all lawnmowers are engineered to last. Knowing this, why would you settle for anything less than a Honda? Year after year, the right tool for mowing the lawn.
The U.S. troops rushed to Honduras last week to counter a reported Nicaraguan incursion started to pack up today for Monday's return home. That didn't stop an estimated 1,500 people from holding a rally today on Boston Common, protesting U.S. policy in Central America. There was some pushing and shoving when a handful of Contra rebel supporters showed up. Cash-starved Panama today declared a moratorium on rent payments while strongman Noriega's riot police, facing a hungry populace, took over 2 flour mills. Juan Vasquez now with that.
A show of force and a shouted threat was all it took today for the police unit known as the Dobermans to seize the privately owned mills and grain silos of Panama. Open up or we'll use tear gas, the officer ordered. Within moments, the Dobermans were rushing in and the owners were moving out.
They're doing what they're accustomed to do. Until we stop them.
To no avail, onlookers chanted for the police to turn against Noriega. At another mill, some employees were arrested and taken to jail while others tried to hide. The takeover is evidence that the Noriega regime is getting desperate. There is no money to import food and most supermarkets are still closed by a general strike. All of this hurts the poor most of all. Until a few days ago, soup kitchens were unknown here. Today, Father Francisco Verar says he knows of at least 20. This one serves a free lunch to 1,300 families a day. The U.S. government has pledged $25,000 to the church relief organization that provides meals to these children. But with hunger spreading so rapidly in Panama, that amount won't go very far.
Podrán arrodillar nuestra hambre.
Noriega accuses the U.S. of trying to starve Panama, and a visiting congressional delegation warns that more economic pressure could backfire.
We don't want to do things which will turn the Panamanian people's focus, the focus of their anger, away from Noriega and directed toward the United States.
While the Dobermans were taking the mills, the government moved on other fronts as well to break the opposition's economic stranglehold. Soldiers took control of the ports from striking workers, and the government ordered stores that sell basic necessities, including food and medicine, to reopen at once. Opposition leaders who watched the takeover of the mills fear that if they don't heed the order by Monday, their businesses are next. Juan Vasquez, CBS News, Panama.
An interesting sidelight: for three-quarters of a century, the canal that made Panama famous has been a vital naval and commercial lifeline. But it no longer has a monopoly on the Atlantic-Pacific connection. Robert Shackney with more on that.
From the time Theodore Roosevelt had it built right on through World War II, the Panama Canal was critically important to the United States Navy, the way to move sea power from ocean to ocean. In 1988, that's no longer true. Modern aircraft carriers are too wide for the Panama Canal. For a Navy that now relies on carrier battle groups and has stationed them in all oceans, the Panama Canal has become strategically obsolete.
We have no need to shuttle our naval forces back and forth from ocean to ocean as we did in the past.
Not only is the canal less important militarily, it no longer means what it used to mean to world shipping. To be sure, the Panama Canal remains a major waterway. Last year, 13,000 ships carried 150 million tons of cargo through it. Coal and grain from the United States, bananas from Ecuador, automobiles from Japan. But experts say closing or losing the Panama Canal would not mean a general disaster.
After the initial shock, the world trade in a global sense would adjust very well, and the impact would actually not be very great.
Shippers now have other choices. There are giant supertankers and bulk cargo carriers too large for the Panama Canal. Alaskan oil moves from Pacific to Atlantic through a pipeline. And a new container transportation system, the so-called intermodal system, moves cargo between the Pacific and America's East Coast in a combination of ship, truck, and high-speed container train, faster and sometimes cheaper than going through the canal. But losing the canal, experts say, would still be painful.
The canal closed, rail costs would almost certainly increase. There would be a short-term and perhaps for some medium period of time, a sharp increase in railroad freight rates. But I think the commerce would largely move whether or not the canal were closed.
No one denies that closing the canal would hurt particular countries and industries badly. Japan, parts of South America, and U.S. coal and grain exporters would be hardest hit. But as the canal's chief economist puts it, there are so many alternatives, the world would hardly blink. Robert Shackney, CBS News, Washington.
The Nicaraguan National Assembly today debated a bill granting amnesty to the nation's political prisoners, the bill part of last Wednesday's ceasefire accord. It calls for the release of the first 100 prisoners tomorrow.
AT&T, I don't believe it.
Their PCs match the specs better.
Better than who?
IBM, Compaq, you name it. I can hang 32 terminals off just one PC. You're still blowing your budget on standalone.
Listen, you sound like a commercial.
You listen, these are facts.
For Post Natural Brand Flakes, Lena Horne on getting the best out of life.
Taking care of my voice, body, and taste buds is what keeps the brass in this horn.
Reach for the best tasting high fiber Bran Flake. Post Bran Flakes at their best.
Hemorrhoids. They hurt, burn, and swell. And more doctors recommend Anusol to relieve the hurting than all other hemorrhoid medicines combined. Anusol is the word to remember for relief.
With another summit scheduled, President Reagan urged the Senate today to give quick approval to the arms deal he signed at last year's superpower summit. The Foreign Relations Committee is scheduled to vote on it next week. In his radio address today, Mr. Reagan said many other difficult issues remain to be settled as he prepares for the Moscow summit this spring. Soviet authorities headed off a massive demonstration planned for today by Armenians involved in a border dispute. And in an unusual development, Soviet television aired same-day pictures of the scene. Barry Peterson in Moscow has our report.
It is Glasnost taken to new limits. Soviet television tonight showing pictures from the Armenian capital of Yerevan that included militiamen, and the admission that trouble had been expected, that the situation might have been critical, but all is normal. This despite claims by Armenian dissidents that many residents went on strike by simply staying inside their houses today. The quiet shows discipline, says this man, a doctor. What about the extra militiamen, the interviewer asked? The answer? Just extra precautionary measures that our people understand. Glasnost has its limits, of course. There were no pictures like these shown during the past weeks of protest over demands that areas inside neighboring Muslim Azerbaijan, where mostly Christian Armenians are in the majority, become part of Armenia. Protest that came about in part because the Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev himself promised more democracy, said it was good for the ethnically diverse Soviet Union. But his government made it clear that massive protest is not a part of how he defines democracy. Today's pictures even included a factory at work. It is calm, dissidents say, in large part because there are enough soldiers, enough force, to make it so. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Moscow.
In Czechoslovakia, thousands of Roman Catholic protesters took to the streets of Bratislava, defying a government ban. They sang and prayed for more religious freedom. Then the riot police moved in, they chased or beat journalists, and they used water cannon and beatings to scatter the marchers. In this country, the talk of three states today was a Friday night light show in skies over Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. What was it? A Soviet rocket launched earlier in the week broke up and burned brightly as it re-entered the atmosphere. None of the debris was found on the ground.
Today, more people depend on Subaru wagons than any imported wagon in America. And with good reason. They're reliable and durable. In fact, if Subaru didn't make your life easier...
Honey, is dinner ready?
Who would? Subaru. We've built our reputation by building a better car.
When your coffee's smooth and easy, like Sunday morning, and it tastes your way.
It's necessarily Nescafe, great coffee blends to taste away. That's necessarily Nescafe.
So what are you doing at Dow these days, Peggy?
Well, right now I'm working in agricultural research, Grandpa. We're trying to help farmers find new ways to make every dollar work harder.
We want to keep this farm in the family a few more generations.
Pretty tough, isn't it?
You bet. So your dad and brother don't need all the help they can get.
And you can make a difference in what tomorrow brings.
I won't let you down.
'Cause Dow lets you do great things.
Well, just a week into spring, it feels like the middle of summer in Southern California. Thousands of people flocked to the beaches today for relief from a heat wave. In Los Angeles, the mercury hit a record 97 degrees. The weatherman says it should be a bit cooler tomorrow. Finally tonight, an update on a story we first told you about last year, an attempt to save the California sea otter from extinction. But whenever man tinkers with nature, the results are not always predictable. And Jerry Bowen reports.
The idea seemed simple enough last summer. Round up a small colony of California's endangered sea otters, remove them from their natural range along the Central Coast where their survival is threatened by potential oil spills, and give them a new home on desolate San Nicolas Island several hundred miles away.
We think it's critical to ensure the survival of the California sea otter that there's another reserve breeding colony somewhere else.
But the experiment has run into trouble, mostly from Mother Nature. Of the 62 animals relocated, only 20 juveniles remain. Of the rest, 8 are known dead, 1 shot and 3 drowned in fishing nets. 8 adults swam the 200 miles back home, and the others are missing.
I suspect that some of them that are now unaccounted for are dead, in fact. But I also suspect that, based on what we've been finding, that the majority of the ones that are missing are animals that have returned home.
The commercial fishermen and abalone divers who work the San Nicolas area, acutely aware of the sea otter's voracious appetite, have high hopes this relocation plan will fail.
If they continue to pump sea otters out there, then eventually they're going to wipe out all our fisheries there.
It's not good for the taxpayer, it's not good for our shellfish resources, and it's proven not to be good for the sea otter.
Scientists and sea otter supporters say it's too early to call off the program, which allows for the relocation of nearly 200 more animals.
By no means is the project clearly a failure at this time. That's simply not the case.
I consider this a mad scientific experiment.
Most of the sea otters which disappeared were adults. What's encouraging to federal authorities is that the 20 animals which remain on San Nicolas are all juveniles, an indication they feel right at home. And plans now call for only young sea otters to be moved to the new colony. Jerry Bowen, CBS News, along the California coast.
And that's the news. Susan Spencer will be here tomorrow. I'm Bob Schieffer, CBS News, New York. Good night.
Dreaming the dreams of America.
Why do so many people choose GMAC financing to get the GM car or truck of their dreams? GMAC makes it easy. You do it all right at your GM dealers. And we make it easy on your budget with rates and terms to fit your needs. Don't just dream about a new GM car or truck. See your GM dealer about GMAC financing. GMAC! Official sponsor of America's Dreams.
Post makes the only bran flakes with Zip Pack freshness to keep their high fiber, best taste fresh longer. I zip what I should have do that.
Post natural bran flakes with Zip Pack freshness.
Zippity-yay.
Dedication, attention to detail, and caring. At Realty World, it's not just the quality of the material our jackets are made of, but the quality of the people who wear them.
Debbie Thomas gets one last chance to dethrone Katarina. The World Figure Skating Championships tonight.
This is CBS.
Last week, we bought this great new VCR at Circuit City. They guarantee if we find a lower price within 30 days, they'll refund the difference plus 10%. I'm going to find a lower price.
Right, Harold.
I found it. Oh, it's a Circuit City sale.
Don't they pay anyway?
They pay anyway, even on their own sale. That's some guarantee.
Harold, you're brilliant.
Circuit City, the intelligent choice.
Hey, Track Auto is really great, and I'm their biggest fan, because they're always there in the clutch. Come on, will you give me a break?